Okay, I think we are good to go. Get over to this page. Turn off my phone so it doesn't ring in the middle here. All right, so welcome to today's lesson. We're going to talk a little bit about APRs and APYs, and because most of you are taking a look at NightSwap and you're seeing APRs and APYs. I've had a lot of people hit me up in my DMs asking about, how does this stuff work? How is APR, APY calculated? Like, what's it in? And there's a lot of questions surrounding it. And I figured I would just make a document or a video explaining some of this stuff and how it works and why most people's thinking about APR and APY is backwards. And hopefully this can be a resource that we can just point new people coming into if they're concerned or they don't understand. So we don't have to answer the questions a million times, and we can protect our bandwidth to do things that are more beneficial for the project. Okay. So APR right now is 47, APY is 60% on our farm. We'll come back to this. Let's talk about kind of the basics. So APR versus APY. Okay, so APR is annual percentage return. This is, think about it, if you didn't touch your farm at all for an entire year, you would make this much return over the entire year because you won't be compounding it at all. Okay, so if you were to just let this night accumulate for an entire year and then harvest it at the end of the year, that would be your APR. Okay, and you can see the difference. APR is 47, but APY is 60%. So what makes up that difference? The answer is compounding. Okay, and this is what we show you guys through the flow model that we have in our white paper, and how we talk about building up your gold mine, compounding that. So APY means annual percentage yield, and this is, if you read the little calculator here, down here, it says calculated based on current rates, compounding once daily. Okay, rates are estimated provided for your convenience only. They are not extremely accurate. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, why that is. So what does compounding look like for us? Basically, there's a few ways you can do it. There's different pathways. We're not going to tell you what to do. Just because I show you guys something does not mean that that should be what you go and do. You should understand if it gets you closer to what you want, if building your gold mine is what you want, you have to understand what your macro belief is. Do you want more night? Do you want more forge? Do you want more guard? Do you want more Bitcoin? Those kind of answers are going to help you inform behavior on what to do. Okay, so compounding for us, we stake our forge BNB LP and we earn night. Okay, there's several things you can do with this. You could, and technically what an auto compounder does, if you look at Guardian BUSD and the auto compounder for that, what it does is it's taking this night that you earn every day and it's selling half of it to buy guard, selling the other half to buy BUSD. It's pairing those two halves together and putting it back into the LP for you. Okay, this is what we're doing manually right now. We do not have an auto compounder. It is very likely that we can get one. But for now, it's important that everybody understands the compounding process and how it works, so that we're not just lazy and throwing things into an auto compounder, not understanding how anything works, and not being able to answer questions or help people coming in. Okay, so the way it looks for us is our forge BNB earns us night. Now you can take that night and you could sell it for half forge and half BNB, pair it back in, and go that route. Okay, we tend to stray away from this generally because we want to be an ethical ecosystem partner, right? If we're looking at 5-10 year timelines and building a lot of wealth over that time, the most important thing for us using NightSwap as a vessel is to protect the ecosystem, right? To support the price of night. Now, if everybody's just selling that night off and buying half forge and half BNB, that ends up being a lot more selling pressure on night. So that being said, what is the alternative? Okay, there's a couple alternatives. You could take this night, and if you have a longer time preference, you could drop it into the pool and you could earn yield on top of your yield. Okay, so now instead of getting, whatever this APR APY is, now you're getting yield on top of that as well. Okay, and then you can take the night that's earned from the pool and drop that into a RAID, sell the RAID asset for BNB, and then buy half forge, use the other half of the BNB, pair it back into liquidity, and compound your gold mine. Okay, so if you wanted to go the faster route, if your strategy is I want to beef up my gold mine as much as possible right now, so it spits out as much night as possible, because I believe that night is going to blow up, and I'm trying to accumulate as much night as possible right now. So I would like to beef up my gold mine so I can increase my output of night. You could go straight from the farm, your night, and drop it straight into a RAID. Okay, you can skip the extra compounding step. This will get you BNB quicker. In the RAIDs pools, we're trying to stray away again from selling things that are ecosystem assets. Now we can't tell you what to do with your money. We're just showing you how to be an ethical ecosystem partner. So we don't want to sell things that are in direct synergy and correlation with this ecosystem. Okay, so things like Guardian, Wizard, Spartans is another one. However, the 10% tax actually goes back to buying night. So it's actually built for this, but generally, if there's other things like DEP, these two down here that just launched are great raids, D-Launch, Dust. And then if you're trying to accumulate more forge, if that's your macro, you're like, hey, I'm trying to accumulate as many tokens as I can early on, I have BNB that I'm feeding into the front end of the system, then it might be smart to just go sit in this raid, accumulate forge, and take that new BNB that you're front loading into the system and use that to pair and build your gold mine. Okay, so there's a lot of open loops. I hope that wasn't too confusing. There's a lot of open loops. There's a lot of ways that you can go about getting more of what you want. But the first step, as we've talked about in the previous sessions, is figuring out what you want, which is not necessarily an easy thing. We tend to think it is. I sat down. Callie's actually here today. I sat down with Callie and we got granular, and she did the same thing with Joey, and she just did the same thing with the Luna Den. And it's very humbling to see that process and understand, okay, maybe I'm not giving this enough attention to really define, what it is that I want. So that's definitely the first step. And then discerning what your macro belief is, and then kind of backing into the strategy from there. Okay, so if you need new BNB, you don't have a bunch of new capital or fiat to put in, then going from the farm to the raid, selling the BNB off from the raid to buy half forge and BNB in pair is probably going to be your best strategy for compounding, depending on your situation. Okay, you'll have to figure it out for yourself. I can't tell you one way or another. Do not ask me. Okay, I'm just going to say it depends. You're going to have to do the work one way or another. Okay, if you have new BNB coming in, it might be wise to sit in this raid pool and get a lot of forge, because you're not paying the buying tax to get this, right? Because you're raiding it for free using your night. Okay, that's why we like night. It's buying power. It's accumulation power. Okay, so it was a little bit of a tangent, but let's talk about APRs, APYs. Okay, so how are APRs and APYs calculated? So to get into this, we first have to understand how a DEX works and what these multipliers are. You'll see next to these, next to the farms, there's a little orange oval that has a number in it. So there's 45x, 60x, 15, 10, 2, 1, So ours is a 1x multiplier. And like I said, it's super important to understand how these multipliers work so that you can understand how the emission system works, how many tokens are being distributed. You can kind of back into understanding how the whole system works. And it'll make it a lot easier to understand why these APRs and APYs can be a little bit confusing. Okay, so this is the docs page on NightSwap. You just click this more button. You can go click docs, and you can read through this entire thing. I highly suggest you do. It's very interesting. There's a lot of great information in here. This is the night token tab. So you can see here, that NightSwap, as a DEX, emits 288,000 tokens per day. Okay. Now, technically, not all of those go to people on the DEX because 0.9 of every 10 go to a dev wallet. And you can read why. I'm not going to go into it, but you can read why they do that down here. Okay. So let's just say 288,000 is the total emissions of night that is emitted to users daily. Okay, so the multipliers, what they actually are, they're a little bit confusing because multiplier is definitely not an appropriate name for it, but that's how they're used across most DEXs. So the multiplier actually represents a slice of those total emissions. Okay, so if you have, let's pull this back up. If you look at Night BNB, it has a 60x. Okay, so it is getting the largest amount of Night tokens emitted to that farm. Okay, Night BUSD is 45, BNB BUSD 15. The pool is actually the third largest, which is 30x. And then Guardian is a 10x. Everything else is a 1, 2, or 0.5. Okay, so the multiplier represents the total emissions, or I'm sorry, a slice of the total emissions. And the reason why they incentivize people to provide liquidity for these farms is because these are what allows the price to become more stable and the DEX to function in a more efficient manner. Okay, so to clarify, BNB BUSD, USDT BUSD, so you would not be able to swap from USDT straight to BNB without these two farms being available, right? So what this does is it allows the DEX to route directly through this. So if you wanted to go USDT to BNB, even though there's no direct liquidity for that, it would go USDT to BUSD, and then it would go BUSD to BNB. Okay, that's the reason that these have 2x multipliers on them, because they make the DEX more efficient. They make trading more efficient. Okay, more volume on a DEX is better. So that's kind of how the multipliers work and how they're structured. Okay, so if we know that we have a 1x multiplier, okay, I have a spreadsheet here. Do not ask me for it. I will tell you to build it on your own. It's something that I had to build with the help of Joey and Callie, so you will get the same treatment. But essentially, you can see here with the multipliers, what is the percentage of total emissions? So this is actually the total amount emitted to users. So what is the percentage of emissions that the farm gets? So we get about 0.57%, and this could have changed. I haven't updated it in the past couple of days. But we're around 0.5% of the total emissions, okay, which is about 1,472 night tokens daily. Okay, so our farm is spitting out roughly, and again, I haven't changed these numbers. This TVL is way higher now. It's probably like 650. Oh, numlock is on its way. Okay. So yeah, about 1,400 tokens are emitted daily from that farm. Okay, so what your slice of the pool, so let's say you have a $10,000 Forge BNB farm. Okay, this is your investment. Okay, this is your gold mine. So if you have a $10,000 farm, you have about 1.5% of this amount of night tokens that are emitted daily. Okay, which is about price of night 53 cents. I might have messed something up. I don't know if that's right or not. I'll have to back check it. But what matters is this is your percentage of the pool. Okay, so your APR is kind of being dictated. The amount of night that you're receiving is being dictated by your percentage of the pool. Okay, so a $10,000 farm in the night BNB farm, even though it's emitting a lot more tokens, you only have 0.09% of the pool, but you're still likely making a little bit more night tokens from that because the multiplier is much, much, much higher, 60x what the Forge one is, right? So the question begs, if I'm getting more night tokens with a higher APR and APY, so if you take a look at our APR and APY, 47% or 60% APY. If the night APY is 350%, 150% APR, then why wouldn't I just go and start my farm in night BNB instead? Because I'm getting a higher APY. Okay. So we talked about how this stuff is calculated, what your percentage of the pie of the pool is really more appropriate. Okay. So this is important to talk about now. So what are the variables that impact APR and APY? Okay. So generally, most humans' brains, the way we function and the way we think in dollars, and that's what the APR and the APY is being calculated in, right? It is a snapshot in time of a dynamic system with 3 variables that are constantly moving. Okay, so it is a ballpark of a multivariable equation in dollars. So that's why the UI in a lot of these dApps and indexes and stuff is not very accurate, because the blockchain doesn't function on dollars. It's not built to function on dollars. So these calculations are kind of what throw people off, because they look at this, they're like, oh man, I can only get 60% APY, but I could go over here, I could get more, right? I could get 350%. I'm going to go put it there. Okay, let's take a look at what the difference would be if you had started with like a $5,000 farm in Night BNB when we launched 12 days ago. Okay, so let's pull this up. Pull up the chart. Okay, so right before we jump into that, the 3 things that really affect APR and APY. Okay, the price of the principal assets of your farm. Okay, if the price of Forge goes up and the price of BNB goes up, your APR will go down. We want the APR to go down. That is a good sign. That means your principal is growing. Okay, everybody looks at the APR, APY, and they say, well, I thought I was going to get this much. What they don't understand is that in 12 days, they've gotten 757% in appreciation. Okay, in Night, March 17th. It's about almost the exact same price as it was. So yes, they got more Night tokens, but they didn't make nearly as much money. Okay, a good way to explain this, and this is an analogy that Nick uses frequently with real estate, is let me pull my. So if you had a house, if you owned a home and you were renting that home out, the home was worth $1 million. Okay, and this isn't going to be super realistic in terms of rent, but if your house was worth $1 million and you earned $1 million in rent, you made 100% return. Okay. Now, if your house appreciated to 5 million, so your asset grew in value because the housing market goes up, 10, 15% every year. Okay, these are just arbitrary numbers, but let's say your house appreciated to 5 million and you still made 1 million in rent. Because you're calculating the APR on
Yo, Daniel, we can't hear you, buddy. Fix your mic, brother.
Yeah, you're on mute, brother.
Oh, whoops. How long have I been on mute?
Like 10 seconds.
Okay, that's weird. I don't know why I did that. Okay, So I'll walk back through it. Okay, so if the house you own is worth $1 million, you make $1 million in rent. Okay, I know that's not what people pay for rent, but just for the sake of math, you made 100% return, right? Now, if that same house next year appreciated to $5 million because the housing market went up, you're still getting paid in rent in dollars. Even though the value of your asset appreciated, you're getting paid in dollars, right? So the return then becomes 20% APR. Okay, let's do it the other way. If you had a house worth $1 million and it depreciated to 500K and you made $1 million in rent, you made a 200% return. Now here's where it gets funny, because people in crypto, they see these high APRs and APYs and they're like, oh, look, I can go get a 200% return on my money. But they lost way more money than they made in the yield, right? Because their assets depreciated. So the person who got 20% and is feeling bummed actually made a ridiculous amount of more money than the person who depreciated in value, but is looking at this and being like, look at me, I'm making a bunch of money. Okay, this is the same thing we're talking about in our farm. Okay, the price of your house, your gold mine, has appreciated. That one first. Okay, the price of your gold mine has appreciated a lot. Okay, over 700% from where we are right now. Okay, so what does that do to the APR? It brings it down, right? This is why this is down so fast. So if you're looking at, some of these other farms and you're like, wow, look at these guys. Like, they're making 35,000% APY. Like, that's amazing. I'm going to go do that. Well, I'm not going to go and open it up and pick on them or anything, but I can guarantee you the price of their asset does not look very good. And that's why you're seeing that really high APR, APY. There's also another variable that affects APR and APY is saturation in the pool. Okay, they only have 52,000 in liquidity. We have 662,000. Okay, so to go back to this document, variables that impact APR and APY, we have price of the principal assets, which is what we just talked about. Okay, appreciation, price of the yielded asset, which we haven't talked about yet. Okay, so what happens, because all of this APR is calculated in night, right? It's the dollar value of the night gained over a period of time, over a year. Okay, what happens if the price of night goes from 50 cents to $1 and it doubles? What happens to all of these farms? You can unmute and let me know if you want, or I can just tell you. What do you think happens if the price of night doubles?
APY goes up.
The APY goes up, right? Because the thing we are being rewarded in, the value of that asset goes up. So the value of all of these APRs and APYs and all these farms will go up, especially this one, right? What happens when there's people start figuring out that there's almost $250 million of TVL in less than 5 months. It just started reading volume on CoinMarketCap, thanks to Callie and the efforts of the team. Okay, what happens when the price of night starts coming up? These APRs, APYs get juicier. People see that. They go and chase the APR. They buy night. Price of night keeps going up. It creates a mania phase more often than not. You see it in many of these DEX tokens. I'll show you an example using a DEX that we're not too fond of, but they're a good example. The mania phase comes, and the danger in it is if the price of the DEX token is allowed to skyrocket, it becomes more valuable than everything else on the DEX. Nobody will want to do anything else. They don't want to raid anything using their night. They'll just want more night and sell the night because the night is the most valuable thing. because it exploded in price, right? And this is what you see when that happens. Let's go to the daily. Okay. This is what you see. You have a huge pump. It went from 92 cents to $11. Okay, that's ridiculous. But it came right back down because everybody's the DEX token banana for ApeSwap. So that banana is to ApeSwap what Night is to NightSwap. The DEX token exploded, became way more valuable than everything else, and then everybody sold it back into the ground, and then you're right back where you started. Except there's a huge emotional deficit from your holder base because everybody just went through an insane period of hype and euphoria and like, oh my God, I'm rich, to a massive deficit. And then people who bought at the top, you have those emotional people. So now you just have the same price, but a huge emotional deficit for everybody. And it's not healthy and it's not sustainable. I mean, look at the price of banana now. You tell me, are they doing good stuff? I don't think so, but you make your own decisions. Okay. If you look at the price of Night, because of the way that Night functions, because they are an ethical DEX, they use a lot of the fees and stuff that normally DEXs would pocket to go back to support the price of Night. If you look at it, it's been very stable when everything else has been moving down. Okay, look at Pancake. Even Pancake. Night has been far outperforming the number one DEX. So it went from $20 down to $6 in the last 180 days. Okay, so against the US dollar, Night has been moving a little bit down, mostly sideways, right? If we look at it against its local environment, against BNB, it has actually been significantly outperforming BNB. This chart almost flips. Now we have higher lows. If we look at it against the US dollar, we have kind of a little bit of lower lows and then move sideways. Here we have higher lows moving up. This is what you want to look at. Okay, the local environment, it's been outperforming the market. Okay, so the price of Night will also affect the APRs and APYs. The last thing is the saturation in the farm, and I apologize for going on that tangent. Sometimes that happens, but hopefully it was helpful or useful. So the more people, if our farm is emitting this many tokens a day, the more people that join, the smaller your percentage of the pool gets, which means you'll get less Night daily, which means your APR will go down, right? So saturation in the farm, in the liquidity pair, will also bring the APR and APY down. So the reason that we're seeing Forge's APR and APY go down a lot is because two of those three things have happened significantly over the course of 12 days. Okay, Night has stayed relatively the same in price. It's actually gone up a little bit. I think it was at like 49 cents or 50 cents when we launched. The price of our asset has exploded. We're sitting at, I think, a little bit under a 10x right now. A little bit under a 10x right now. And kind of moving sideways and maybe finding a floor. I don't know. I don't like to speculate, but just from the data that we're seeing, like this is incredibly bullish to see not a huge dump after this huge pump. And it could happen, could come. I don't mind at all. We could come all the way back down to 2 cents and I would be happy. And I know that might sound strange to some of you guys, but all we care about is a higher floor. Okay, so we had both the price of the principal assets go up, and since we're teaching people how to use Forge as buying power, as a gold mine, how to compound it, and build these passive asset accumulation strategies, people are following through with what we're teaching because they see the value. And we have more TVL in our farm than any other farm on here, except for two of them. One of them is Wolfies, and we're approaching them. The other one is Guardian, and I don't think we'll ever catch them because they have $37 million in liquidity. Okay, but this is they're using the base case and chill strategy is people are compounding their base case, right? the reason why the APR and the APY on Guardian is so low is, again, look at the data. Okay, the appreciation from the asset. So new people coming in are asking, hey, it says that, the base case in the Wolf Den is 70%. It says I'm supposed to get 70%. How come the APR and the APY is 8%? You guys are lying to me, right? But even over, this isn't fair. It's just ridiculous. Let's zoom in a little bit. Okay, so even going from the end of February, let's go from the end of February to where we are right now. Okay, you have 293%. You have far outpaced that 70% APY, but because of the way that our brains are wired, you're just looking at the APY in return in dollars, and you're like, this doesn't make sense, because you're not looking at the other factors that affect this. You're not looking at this example that we showed earlier, right? That makes sense to everybody?
Oh, yeah.
Cool. All right, so just to kind of wrap things up, I don't want to make this too long. I want to keep it concise and to the point, just so that everybody really understands how to look at these things. So now that you understand how APR, APY works, what affects them, how to think about APR and APY, okay? I wrote this down just as a note: traditional finance versus decentralized finance model. Anywhere in the traditional financial realm, if you could get even 47% APR, and you went to somebody, a boomer, or a traditional finance person, a traditional financial advisor, said, hey, I can get 40% a year, they're going to look at you like you're fucking crazy, right? But for some reason, we drop into crypto and we start acting like a bunch of greedy assholes, and we're like, oh my God, I can get 36,000% APY. I'm going to go put my rent money in here and blow it up over a couple months. Well, a great example of why you shouldn't chase APY is what happened with Time Wonderland. Okay, I don't know if you guys are familiar. If you're not, go look it up. I'm not going to go into depth on it, but essentially the idea is people were chasing APY because it looked really appealing. Okay, and then the asset depreciated and lost 9. I don't even know. Somebody can chime in and let me know if I'm off, but it was like over 90% of its value in a few days. Okay, so even though they were getting like, I don't know, I think it was like 7 or 17,000%, or something crazy like that. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. I didn't really look at it that much. 17,000% APY. Like if you were getting that on 10 grand and then your asset depreciated by 90%. Now you're getting a bunch of Time Wonderland tokens, which is cool, but they're worth nothing. And you've lost a bunch of money. So chasing APYs will more often than not get you wrecked. What you want to see in strategies like these is APR and APY going down. It is counterintuitive, I know, but hopefully it makes it more sense now that we talked about why that happens. So yeah, this is a very good metric. Okay. We talked about this already. We kind of baked in a lot of the stuff into the caveats, but what you're looking for is growth in your principal, not growth in your APY. Because if the APY is going up, that means it can mean a number of things. Like we talked about, it could mean that the price of night is going up. It could mean that the people are pulling out of the farm, so your APY is going up because there's less saturation. Or it could mean that the price of your gold mine is going down. So try to reframe and refocus the brain on how to look at some of these APRs and APYs and understand they're not being calculated, they are being calculated on the dollar value of everything that you yield. which is not how the blockchain works. Okay, so it can be very misleading, especially to new people coming in. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Let's talk about setting expectations and managing them, and being conservative. Okay, so protecting your mental space means managing your expectations. Okay, we can sit here and pull up this compounding calculator, and you can play around and play the what if game. Like, oh, I'm in this night farm, I'm getting 150% APY, and if I have $5,000, on a month, compounding once a month for 5 years, I could have this many dollars. You can play that game, but you're better off, because this will likely continue. I mean, it really depends on what happens with the price at night, but the more people come onto the platform, generally the lower this APY is going to go because of the saturation, right? So if you manage expectations and you build what the Wolf Den is doing for Guard BUSD is a base case, and that base case is built on a 70% APY, and that APY is built with appreciation of the asset, liquidity mining fees, and your yield. It's taking those things into account, and it's focusing on a 70% APY over time, right? So people who bought Guardian less than a year ago are far, 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 far ahead of schedule. Okay, they're up 3,800%. They have collapsed time immensely, but they didn't do anything to collapse time. They just let their asset appreciate. They were patient, followed the strategies. They know what they wanted, and they let their asset appreciate and collapse time for them. Where a lot of people will go wrong is they're going to go out and they're going to try to do a lot of things to collapse time, whether it's trading shit coins or doing silly stuff, when really the people who built a base case and just put it in an auto compounder and sat here are likely better off than anybody who tried to trade this chart or do anything silly to collapse time. So the appreciation of the asset will collapse time for you. And Forge, if you were right around here at launch and you created your gold mine, you are far ahead of schedule. Okay, depending on and that's that I can't really say that because I don't know what you're trying to solve for or what it is that you're trying to reach, but likely you've collapsed time in some way, shape, or form because of the appreciation of the asset. Okay, so when you're doing the math, manage your expectations. Set it lower. Use like a 50% APY. Because anything above that becomes a bonus, right? And we haven't sat down and built a bottom line or a base case or anything, right? Which is we need more data in order to discern that. It hasn't even been a month yet. Okay, but setting the bottom line is setting that conservative expectation. So if I get 50% a year and I have a $10,000 farm and I compound it once a week, and every month I put in $100 to the front end of the farm. Okay, so that $10,000 in 5 years would be worth $146,000. Okay, if you brought in your time frames, because maybe you don't need it in 5 years, maybe 10 years is acceptable. Now you're looking at $1.7 million at a 50% APY. Okay, we're getting more than 50% right now, still. So just manage your expectations when you're looking at some of this stuff and use conservative approaches, because anything over the top of that becomes a bonus. And if, where is it? If you're ahead of schedule, what you can actually do, and I think I need to pull up the Wolf Den calculator. If you're ahead of schedule, you'll actually know that you can pull out some of that overage and you can move it into something else because you're on track, right? Oh, that's not it. Here we go. So if you have 10-year timeline and you have a 70%, I'm just going to use the base case method here. And your target balance is $5 million. Okay, you're starting, let's say you're starting with 5,000 more, 10,000. Okay, so if you're starting with $10,000 and you're getting an average of 70% APY for 10 years, you're making $260 more than you need. You can actually pull $260 out and put it into something safer to lock in more certainty into actually getting what you want. Or you can take that overage and give yourself a paycheck, or you can take that overage and buy more of your macro belief. Maybe your macro belief is guard or Bitcoin. You can take some of that and move it into other things because you know I'm on track and I can take some of this overage out and allocate it somewhere else based off of my my equation, right? So setting a bottom line, we'll get more into this. I am just now joining Nick and Dan's CCA program. So I'm excited to learn and become a better leader and hopefully to bring you guys along with me. But this is as much as I really want to say about it right now. Does anybody have any questions regarding any of the things that we talked about or any comments?
No, I love that people were in your DMs asking about APRs and APYs because I've been interested in them and kind of curious about them as well. So this is really helpful for everyone. Thank you.
They can be a little confusing and they're very counterintuitive. People are like, why is my APY down? And you're like, have you seen the chart? Like you made like 10 grand, bro. Why are you mad? Why are you mad, bro? People are funny.
Very
it's
concise.
just the way, it's just the way our brains are programmed in dollars, right? If you're playing a smarter game, you're likely thinking in assets versus dollars. And if you're thinking in assets, if you're getting paid in night and night goes up, that means your APR and you've been stacking that night. You've been taking that extra compounding step. That means your APR for the year, because you're earning yield on yield, it goes up significantly. It becomes an exponential game, right? Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Hey, Danny, I have a comment on the actual the multiplier. I mean, the NISA has a method to change the multiplier, right? They have their own metrics for that.
Correct. Yes, they are in control of the emissions. Did you have a question specifically about that?
No, I just wanted to make the comment because I think you did mention that a multiplier could change at some point. I'm talking for our own farm, Forge BNB. Can move up from 1x to a 2x and so forth. Yeah.
So there's several things that we can pull levers for to increase the APR and APY over time as new people come in. The biggest thing is going to just be the price of night coming up, and we can help that to happen by being ethical and not selling night, right? I'm fairly confident, and this is just my personal opinion. Okay, it's not financial advice. It's not to be shared publicly and all that. It's my private opinion, but I believe that there is a mania phase that is coming for night sooner than later. It's been kind of just creeping in the background. Not a lot of people really know about it. So if that happens, everybody that's on this platform and associated in this ecosystem wins big time. So that's the biggest lever. The other one is, as CJ was saying, if we can prove our value to NightSwap, to Nick and Wizard and the team over there. It is possible. Okay, and this is just speculation. It is possible. I've had conversations with them. I know what it takes, but it is possible that we can get an increase on our multiplier or a change in our emissions rate. It's very possible that can happen if we bring the TVL and we bring the volume that is beneficial for the DEX. We become a valuable asset to them. So that is what we're trying to do in these first couple of months is to prove our value to NightSwap. Hey, we're bringing more TVL than anybody else. We're bringing all our volume is going through NightSwap because we don't even have liquidity on PancakeSwap anymore, which is one of the reasons I took it off. And we're bringing a whole new user base to the Night ecosystem. Okay, we're teaching people how to ethically use Night as it's intended to be used versus just selling that for other things. So those are valuable things to a DEX. So it's very possible, to answer your question, that we can pull some of those levers once we've proven our worth and our value. It is day 12 right now, so we've got quite some time to collect that data and to show them that we bring a lot of value. So that's likely not going to happen anytime soon. But there might be something pretty exciting coming relatively soon that would be a big benefit for us. So I'm not going to tell you guys what it is because it's still a little bit speculative at this point. I don't want to give any false certainty, but we got some exciting stuff coming up. So I'm going to stop the recording real quick and then we can keep shooting the shit here. 46 minutes. Perfect.